Well, welcome to the Dean and Kate podcast until further notified. Yes, America, we are still waiting on our name. Maybe by the time we hit our first year.
Yeah, maybe. Does the stork bring that? Like it brings babies? Like it's just going to deliver a name to our podcast?
What, apparently a year? Anyway, I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole. Well, welcome to our podcast. I'm Dean Nixon, the lovely Kate Semmens. And we are excited to get started with you on our podcast. As always, we want to remind everybody that these opinions expressed on our podcast are our own. Mm-hmm. If they are something that is offensive to you, well, please find another podcast. Comment. Let us know how you thought, what your thoughts and feelings are. We love dialogue as long as it is civil and appropriate.
Yes.
We are going to be speaking on many different concepts based upon the idea of the misconception of the mind.
Right.
And the idea that as we develop as human beings, a lot of the beliefs and a lot of the thoughts that we have about ourselves aren't true. Mm-hmm. And we develop our humanness based upon the ideal of who we should be rather than what we really are and who we really are.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Which brings us into our topic for tonight, which I am absolutely excited. I feel like we lead with that every single time, Dean. Like, I'm so excited. We really
That's
are, though.
Nice
this
about
is
it.
like,
yeah, we are.
This is our bread and butter. It's what we love to do, and it's what I like to do even on a weekend when I'm not working. I just absolutely love diving into humanity and what makes us as humans tick. And so today our topic of conversation is going to be on the evolution of being a person. And I'm not talking like from caveman on the way up to now. I'm talking about from birth through your evolution as an individual, and kind of some of the places that we really get that misconception that Dean was just talking about with what we think is what should be happening instead of really being where we are in every moment.
Yeah, and I like that you put that, the evolution of being. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think that's our title.
Done.
The evolution of being. Mm-hmm. And it's so funny to me how, and this is what we were talking about in prepping for the podcast, is really the idea of this misconception of who we think we should be. Mm-hmm. And, we start out, as you mentioned, we start out as kids. We start out very young and very early, creating these beliefs about life and what life is. And a lot of those beliefs and a lot of those things that we create are based upon glances at things or quick peeks into life or world. Also, the things that are being inferred or being implied or being imposed upon us as realities and belief systems. And so as a consequence of that, we really start to create a ideal or a belief about what the world is and how we fit.
Right. What our role is supposed to look like.
Yes.
In finger quotations, right?
Finger quotations, yes. What is our life supposed to be? What is it supposed to look like? Rather than allowing our life to become what it is. Mm-hmm. And I think about that a lot. And so here's the hypothesis I'm throwing out for this podcast. This is my hypothesis. I wonder what it would be like. I proposed that if you grew up in an environment where you had no social structure, no spiritual structure, nothing pressing upon you, that you would evolve into a being, or you would evolve into who you are more naturally, is what I'm proposing.
With less, friction is the word that comes to my mind.
What do you mean?
Because I operate from the belief that eventually everyone will hopefully get there anyway, right? But
right.
The hypothesis or what you're proposing is, in my mind, that we would get there a lot more naturally with less conflict within ourselves.
Yes, internal.
Less friction coming up against bumping into all those other things like you were talking about, either be a religious perspective or spiritual or social or, from your parents or your neighborhood or whatever it is that you are growing up in. If it was more just free flowing, then there would be a lot less contention in it, a lot less
strife
that
or
stuff
struggle.
that we get, like just that turmoil that we get all up inside of us that causes so much pain for a lot of us.
Yeah. Well, and this is what I kind of base the hypothesis Snuffleupagus, the hypothesis on. You're welcome, America.
Yep, there it was.
The hypothesis on is, so when we come into the world, we come in with certain personality traits. It's just inherent within us. And anytime you sit down and you watch a newborn between the 0 to 6 months, you're going to really see a personality. You're going to see two different types. You're going to see an externalized human being and an internalized human being. You're going to see an externalized child that as a baby is going to need to be entertained, need something around, have something to shove in its mouth, to be very, very active, very engaged, very, very stimulated by the world itself. Then you have an internalized baby. That internalized baby is going to be very much observing and very kind of sitting quietly in its car seat or carrier, kind of observing life.
They're kind of the easy babies, huh?
They call them the easy baby, yes, that's their term, the easy baby, because their reality is going on in their head. So what the externalized baby is expressing is what the internalized baby is feeling inside.
Right, yes.
So it's the same thing.
Right. They're basically having the same experience. We can just externally see the results of what's going on the externalized baby.
Right. And so it just does it differently.
I think about my niece Berkeley, who is very internalized. She's 12 now. But as a child, man, we would just do everything in our power to try to get her to crack a smile and just giggle and coo and do all those kinds of things, because she just was like, and it's like, hello, are the lights on inside there, right? She was just like quite an easy child like that.
Yeah, very, very internalized. And so the difference between these two kids is going to really impact how they interact with the world. It's going to impact the way that they explore the world around them. So again, this is a hypothesis based upon a non-realistic situation. Right. So people out there, if you're already arguing with me, great. But it's based upon a non-realistic expectation. There's no way this could happen. But if it did, so as this child is exploring the world, depending on whether it comes in internalized, externalized, it's going to start to move through the world and start to explore it in a different way than the other child would be. So if we put them on an island, is what I'm proposing. You put them on an island, you put one on one side of the island, one on the other side of the island, and then they'll start to develop. And then by the time they get probably about 2, 4, 5 years old, they're going to start to all of a sudden move into another part of their personality. And the other part of their personality is going to be the way that they do things. And so you've got some children that are very flexible with life. They just kind of go with the flow. They kind of go out and they set something up and it falls apart and they're like, yeah, okay. And then they kind of make do and they just go with the flow, but they also have a hard time getting things done on time. They have a hard time with time. They're getting, they're running behind, they're late, etc. And then you have the other side where you've got a child that's very, very, has to have things meticulously a certain way, needs it to be very, very structured. And if they don't have structure, they'll provide their own rules, right? Their own quote rules. So a flexible person needs external rules, and more of a regulated child's going to have rules
that they've already created for themselves,
right? And so now again, if we are watching these two children develop, and you've got these two different personalities, they're going to start adding this next feature, and then finally the third feature, which really is not going to be too relevant until they finally meet each other, is the social kind of aspect of who they are. And you're going to have a child that's very, very uniformed. They like things to be, certain understood a certain way, certain social structures, and then you've got the other that tends to be a little bit more adaptable socially.
So, Dean, is this this is based on the PAS system, right? The personality assessment system.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, and so that's what I'm describing. And so as that child comes in uninhibited by the world now, that child is going to start to have a different experience based upon the personality that they have grown into. And essentially, as that child starts to grow, it's going to create different beliefs, it's going to create different experiences, different expectations, and it would be very intriguing to me to see how quickly that child kind of evolved into who they truly are.
Yeah.
Because as the child develops, they're going to get a lot of pressure if they're in a social situation. So if they're in a family, mom and dad are going to pressure them. If they're a school system, school's going to pressure them. If they're in a religious, then the whoever, priest,
Theology
pastors, bishops, whoever is going to pressure them. So all of these types of things and friends are going to pressure them, and they're going to make adaptations and changes, et cetera, to their personalities based upon that, if that makes sense. So that's my hypothesis.
If only we could test it.
Yes, that would be super weird.
Isn't that the basis of the Truman Show?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, yes and no.
Kind of.
Yes and no, because they did control
right.
the type of interaction that he received, but they were still, making decisions about, and pushing his life one way or the other. But yes, it is that. So, but again, the whole idea of this hypothesis is how much. This is where I really wanted to go with it, and then you jump in whenever you want, is this idea that in our minds we, because of these pressures from teachers, parents, priests, from whatever theology, rabbis, I'm not trying to,
coaches.
Yeah, coaches, friends, all of these inferences or impressions or pressures upon us personally, we start to construct who we should be rather than just being who we can become.
Right. And at quite young ages, might we add, right? This is in like early teenage years is when all of this pressure really starts to kind of get turned on. I love that we're calling it pressure, because in my mind, whenever I feel like this, I feel like I'm in a pressure cooker, like the Instapot has been shut and the pressure is being raised, and I'm like, it's just so, it can get really, really intense.
Right.
To be experiencing that. And the fascinating thing, and listener, this is where we kind of want to be heading down this road, is all of this that gets this misconception of, I really should have everything figured out with my whole life by the time I'm 25. Right? Like, if I don't have, who I want to be and be working on being in the relationship that I want to be in and driving the car and, just kind of that quote-unquote American dream that is out there, then...
Or European.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I don't know who's listening.
I don't know what the European dream looks like.
I don't either.
That would be pretty cool to find out. If you are European. From the UK... Let us know what that looks like for you.
That would be intriguing to hear.
I think so as well. But however, are you ready?
I don't know.
So, timestamp, today's Dean's birthday.
Oh,
here we are. Happy birthday, Mr. Nixon.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. And we kind of got on this topic because here you are, 55 today, and you were saying that, there's not been a time in your life that you've really felt more settled in your skin. Right. Right?
Yeah. To finally be to a point, and that's the basis of where we began our jump into this idea, and I wonder if I had been able to just not have all the things that occurred in my life, the challenges, the disabilities and the abuses and things that had occurred in my life, would I have evolved to where I am today sooner? My what we were talking about.
Right.
Because I finally feel like I'm at an age. So I'm 55. Like, I'm halfway through my 50s.
Double fives, that's a big deal.
I'm pretty stoked.
Yeah.
I do. 5's my favorite lucky number, and I'm twice that.
You got 2 of them.
I got 2 of them, so there you go, people. But the point being is that there were a lot of decisions that I was making, and as I look back, and this is the part that's so incredible to me, is my evolution to being human, or to being to being has been really, really crazy. So I look at, I call it my 5 different lives. I feel like I've lived 5 different lives, and as I look back at them, sometimes it's like they're unreal, like they're not, they're just faded photographs and stories that I recall and I remember, because again, we know the past isn't there anymore. We know the past doesn't exist anymore, so it really doesn't matter anymore. But as I look back at that, like the first part of my life, that first chapter 1 was really that growing up in that very tough experience of having the abusive type of situations that I was in, and the learning disabilities and the dyslexia battle, and going through remedial class, and all the garbage I had to go through at school, and all the other things that occurred, and all of these different things. And as I evolved, I kept looking outside of myself, trying to figure out what was wrong with me. I kept trying to figure out, why is life so horrible? Why do I hate myself so much? And why is everybody else's life seem so easy? All these kids that they're going to school, they're sitting in class, and everything makes sense to them. And I'm wandering off in the middle of the class to this dummy class, that I was referred to by teachers even.
Right.
And so and then as I'm going home, and I'm having these horrible experiences at home that are going on, and all of these things are just, why am I such a failure? Why am I such a loser? What did I do to deserve such a crappy life? And I'm never going to be anybody type of stuff, right? And so then I'm looking outside, and I'm seeing my friends and what a great life they have, and the experiences that they're having in this storybook world, and I'm thinking, okay, well, I should have that life. That's the life I should have. And so then I start to feel depressed, and I start to get depressed, very depressed, and self-loathing of, why can't I have that life? Now, little did I know that they were all having a similar experience, just in a different way.
Yes.
Right? I had no idea that they were feeling uncomfortable in their bodies, and that they were feeling uncomfortable with their lives. I didn't know that some of them had similar situations in their home that I had in mine, and but you think you're alone.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And that's the big trick, is you think you're the only one going through this crap. And so then when I got into my 20s, and then I wind up, next thing I know, bam, 21, 22 years old, married. And I'm like, okay, all right, I made it this far. Now what do I do? Well, I have kids. I have a family. So you got to start having kids, and you got to start working. And so all of a sudden I'm working, and I hit the age of 25. Now I've got 2 kids, and a newborn and a 2-year-old, I believe. And I'm like, I suck. And I'm looking at my friends, and they've got college degrees, and I'm looking at my friends, and they've got jobs that are set for them. One of my good friends worked for his uncle's paving company in Las Vegas, and had it made. Like, he was already making super, super good money. His wife had their first house. He had a super nice Silverado pickup truck, and I'm like struggling.
Yeah.
And again, I'm thinking to myself, I'm a loser. I cannot believe this. And then what was interesting is how I went back to my old story. So right then I go back to, well, this is because you had this happen, and this happened, and because this is wrong with you, and that's wrong with you. And then this is why you are the way you are. And so then that led me into, things starting to fall apart. And next thing I know, all of a sudden there I am, and everything falls apart. At the age of 28, my whole world falls apart. And chapter 2 begins.
And
I go through chapter 2, And it was a really shitty start. Chapter 2 was rough. It just was not easy. And as I'm going through chapter 2, then it starts to evolve into trying to figure out who I am and trying to figure out, and evolve. And so by the time I hit 35, I finally started finding my stride. And then chapter 3 started. And I get into my stride and life starts moving forward. Life starts clicking. Things start to make sense. I start to become successful in life. I still have trials and challenges. And then I get into like 40, 45, 40-ish. It's actually probably 40, 45 in there. And I start chapter 4. And that's when I finally started feeling like, okay, now I know who I am. Now I realize this is who I am.
Right.
I'm still not who I want to be. I'm still living off of who I should be because of my old story.
Right.
And
it's a really big misconception. It's a big one.
Huge misconception that who I should be and who I was had nothing to do with who I really am. And that was the crazy part. And it wasn't until mid-chapter 4 that I started to figure that out. And I really don't feel like I started chapter 5 until probably 52 years old, 53 years old. Then I started chapter 5. And, now a couple of years into chapter 5, I'm like, well, shit, damn. Like I could have, shoulda, woulda type of stuff,
right.
And I have to be careful of that. But I think back at all the evolutions of me, and there's a lot more. I didn't want to spend too much time on chapter 2, 3, and 4. But the reality is that, listener, what I'm telling you is that you're going to look back at who you think you should be one day and who you thought you were one day and realize they are not who you are. And how powerful it would be if we could get to that person now.
Right.
Because there were things I was doing to try and cover it up. There was, substance abuse going on at certain points in my life where I was trying to numb out and disconnect from the world because I didn't want to feel. And I started thinking that was more real. And I was like, oh, I'm so free. Life is so free because I'm doing this. And I'm so rebellious and I'm who I want to be. And, that was all part of chapter 2 and chapter 3, where I really thought I knew who I was because I was rebelling and I was taking control of my life. And, and I blah, 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 blah. And none of that was remotely accurate.
Right.
I was still tied into the misconception of the mind. Now, I feel like I've talked too much. You go.
Well, no, I thank you as always for whenever you get transparent. It's one of my favorite things. And I'm just sitting here like racking my brain as far as trying to come up with a solution about how we can like just alleviate the pressure from people. Because even if in your early 20s or through your teen years to have already been handed the belief, the truism that you will evolve until the day you die. It's all right if you don't have it figured out right now. It's okay that as a sophomore or a junior in high school, you don't know what degree you want to major in college or what you want to, what trade you want to go into, or, I know we've talked about this and I don't know if it's been in Monday Night Lives or in the podcast, but like it is absolutely it's insane for us to expect people, children, teenagers that do not have a fully developed brain to be like, yep, and I'm going to be a doctor. So here we go for the next 25 years of my life, right? Like I'm grateful for doctors and people that decide to do that. But I think a lot of times we make decisions and we get put on paths, just like you were saying, right? Like with your story and your evolution and what you've come to know about you. Could that have happened more quickly? Could you have, grown into what it is that you've become in your early 30s instead of towards your late 40s, right? Like, because, or even into your, your late or mid 20s, like been able to give yourself that that space to really discover instead of like showing up the way that you thought that you were supposed to show up.
Right.
Which then put in a lot of construct and a lot of boxes that you eventually had to like wind yourself out of in order to be like, oh wait, no, these are actually my talents. This is actually what I want to do with my life. I'm really into people, and I want to be working in that profession. And oh gosh, like I have a lot of gifts and talents and abilities when it comes to discernment and intuition and light and all that kind of stuff. Like to have been given more space to kind of allow that evolution to happen instead of, oh, nope, I'm supposed to get married and I'm supposed to have the kids and I'm supposed to just make money and then holy crap, what is my life, you know? Instead of just like walking your path open and able to evolve without all of that, those glass ceilings that we put in that we're talking about, right?
Right.
That we think are there that aren't really there.
Yeah. You know, and you say, what's the solution?
Yeah, I'm always looking for solutions.
To me, it's simple. The solutions are simple. The first solution is this podcast.
Yeah.
And the other podcast.
Just becoming aware.
Information.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I didn't have access to information back then. Like, I don't think a lot of what's out there today was out there at that time. And we've talked about this. A lot of this information, a lot of things that we're talking about has been around for centuries of time. It's just been controlled. It's been diverted. It's been moved out of our path and said, nope, here's the right way.
Right.
You know, and then we get that right way construct that we feed into. And so because a lot of that stuff isn't accessible to us when we're young, a lot of us are making those decisions. But those that are getting that information now, those that are getting this access to this type of information now, it totally can speed their process up. And maybe instead of spending a couple decades in that place, maybe they'll spend one, or maybe just half a decade in any of these pockets. You know, because we all kind of have to go through our crap.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the reality is that, in my opinion, the simple solution is information and then mentoring and having. I mean, I wish with all my heart I had somebody in my life that could have had these conversations with me. If I had, now I kind of did at the beginning, and that's the interesting part, is that when I was in my remedial program, I had a woman named Mimi Sorensen. And if anybody out there knows, you know, Mimi Sorensen's family, she taught at Cottonwood Elementary School back in the 60s and 70s, and part of the, I think maybe part of the 80s. I think she retired. She actually retired down here to St. George. Oh. So I don't know if her family's around. Hopefully somebody might know who she is or, you know, recognize it. But man, what an amazing woman. And she was kind of that person that started that idea in me that I was still a good person and that I was more than, and in a lot of ways really inspired that quest and hunger for knowledge that she really put inside of me and was nurtured, and the flames of that were fanned by my mother as well. But the information just wasn't there. So to have a mentor, I think that's another big thing, is to have somebody that is not enlightened, because we know that's garbage. You know, we know this idea of enlightenment as an arrival point is garbage.
Right.
But if having somebody that is enlightened in the sense that they've explored the dark caverns of who they are enlightened, that's a good mentor and somebody to grab a hold of.
Yeah. I just, like, part of me went, ugh, and I just feel like I need to kind of articulate that a little bit more. Not that enlightenment is garbage, but that it is like you were saying, like an arrival place, right? Like once you've lost been binged on the forehead with the magic wand and been enlightened.
Know everything.
Yes,
and
exactly.
No,
it's
is
a journey.
Yeah.
It's a walk. It's evolution, which is what we're talking about right now, right? Like it's layers and layers of
And that's what enlightenment is.
Exactly.
Enlightenment is taking a torch and going down into the dark caverns of who you are and exploring the areas you're scared to see. That's enlightenment.
Absolutely.
But the idea of floating 4 feet above the air in lotus position like some yogi guru humming, and that enlightenment is the garbage I was referring to.
Yes. So step one is to realize that there is no shoulds, right? You don't should or have to do anything really, and to kind of like open yourself up to the fact also, and I'll throw this out here, that for so many of us, if we don't feel like we've met all those check boxes with shoulds and stuff, that by the time we're in our 30s, like, what use is there anymore, right? Like, there's no hope, and no point in trying to figure it out. Like, if you remove evolution from the table and you're just supposed to have it figured out and be like making your 6 figures and have your significant other and whatever that looks like as far as like the dream life, right? That's not where happiness is. And so many people, myself included, have had experience of like, well, this is not exactly what I signed up for. Like, what is this life experience, right? And but taking that out of frame and being able to put in this new vision of evolution and of growth and of becoming, instead of like having the arrival point, like we're always talking about, right? That misconception of an arrival point, like I'll be happy when, and instead reframing that to the constant. I love how you call them chapters in your book, right? Like just getting excited almost for what's next. Yeah. And being open to your evolution evolution instead of closed into what it's supposed to look like, right?
Yeah, I think
Does that make sense?
Yes, and yeah, very much.
Okay.
And I think a lot of it is just really engaging in your life without expectations. And that's, I think, what you're really saying is, when you're growing at that age, and I think that's the other part, like you said, you get to a point, you're growing and you're looking at the life I should have. Then when you get to a point where it's like, well, crap, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, then you get disappointed. But then there's also those that look at where they should go, and the starting gun goes off, the gate opens, and they just sit down and go, well, shit. There's no way I'm going to get that, so I'm not going to do it at all. And I see a lot of people that will just like, well, I'm not even going to try. Yeah. I'm not even going to put myself out there. I'm not even going to put myself and take the risk to do it. So you get kind of the two different mixes, but both of them are based upon the shoulds. Right. And both of them are based upon this idea of where you should be, or the way you think life should be, or the way you want your life to be because you want it to be perfect, or you want it to be beautiful, or you want it to be like the movies, or you want it to be like somebody else's life, or whatever it is, this expectation piece that we have in our minds. So the reality is like you said, is the first step is to really take the expectations off your life. And to engage in what it is at the moment and allow it to develop and evolve. Right. And if that evolution takes you to college, it takes you to college. If that evolution causes you to invent a light bulb, it causes you to invent a light bulb. Wherever that evolution takes you is really where we go. And if you had sat down with me when I was even in chapter 3 and said, Dean, when you're 55, you're going to be doing a podcast with Kate Semmens. You're going to be doing webisodes. You're going to be doing seminars. You're going to be doing personal life coaching, corporate coaching. You're going to be doing workshops and seminars and, all these things and written books and all this, I would have looked at you and been like, I think you got the wrong guy.
Who's behind me?
Because that's not the path I'm
to?
headed down.
Right.
I'm going to go this way, and this is who I'm supposed to be, and this is what I don't know what you're talking about. That doesn't even make sense. I don't even understand what that is. Mm-hmm. Because some of the things that, listener, that you're out there, some of the things that you're going to become haven't evolved yet.
Yeah.
Nobody could ever explain, like, the jobs that you and I have were unheard of.
Yeah.
I remember one of my family members, this was the funniest story, about 10 years ago, one of my family members came down, a couple of my family members came down, and one of them was, we were walking in to the building. We'd just gotten our sign up on the building, turning leaf sign up on the building, super proud of the company that I built. Mm-hmm. And with my partner, Dr. Moody and Sue Judd, and very proud of my company. And not that I did it all by myself type thing.
Yeah.
Even though I feel like the last man standing at this point is losing Doc, and Sue has moved on. But the thing that was so amazing to me is, as we're walking in, one of my family members, she turns to me and she goes, so people come here and talk to you and pay to talk to you? And I'm like, yes. And they know you're not a therapist, right? Yes. Uh-huh. And they pay you for that? And I'm just sitting there going, ouch. But I'm chuckling a little bit because, like, they couldn't even comprehend. Mm-hmm. Like, they could not even comprehend what this job is that we do. Mm-hmm. That because even 10 years ago, this was such a new thing, right?
Yeah.
It was barely starting to become.
That's probably when I had barely first been introduced to the idea of a life coach or a mentor.
And now, everywhere. Mm-hmm. Now, everywhere. So, listener, understand that if you're trying to pigeonhole yourself now, like I was doing back then, you close doors. Because it may be that in your chapter 5, you're doing something that hasn't even been heard of yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let that sit for a minute.
Let that sink in.
And perhaps your evolution of you just following your heart is going to maybe even create that. Like, to be a pioneer in whatever that is, right? Like, that is so powerful.
And that's how I feel about where I'm at. Is I've had to create it all. Mm-hmm. Like, I had to literally innovate and be innovative to create everything that we're sitting in this moment. And yes, I had a lot of great mentors, a lot of great teachers. I had a lot of great guidance. I'm not even going to remotely stand here and say I did it by myself.
Sure.
That would be a huge lie. Mm-hmm. But I will tell you that it was something that I had to create. Mm. There's so many times I sit back and I think to myself, like, my job is not something that you would find at a counselor's office in high school. Mm-hmm. And
like when you're looking down the list of what do you want to be,
possible career paths. Yeah. Like, this had to be something that I had to create, and so that's the part where I would say that if you're listening to this, I'm hoping it's inspiring you to recognize, well, wait a minute, I keep thinking I'm supposed to be somewhere by now, or I'm supposed to have this all figured out by now, and you may be only in chapter 1 or 2.
Yeah.
But I don't even know what chapter 6 is going to bring. I'm pretty stoked.
Yeah.
And I don't even know what chapter 7 or 8, or even if I'll get a chapter 9 at this point. And as you can see, they don't always line up with my decades either. Mm-hmm. But I will tell you that chapter 5 has been amazing.
And I just love that and it just breaks my heart. So I'm going to get a little bit transparent right now as well. So I can remember.
So I don't have to be the only one.
Nah, I'll meet you today.
Thank you.
I can remember, like, one of my misconceptions as far as this evolution process that we're talking about. I can remember being nearly 30 and still not being married, and coming from my social construct here in southern Utah, where it's predominantly the predominant religion is Mormonism, with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and it's very culturally normal to get married very young and to start raising families at least my whole life experience, that's what it was, that was the norm. And so I had already felt basically like an old mare put out to pasture at 30, that I had missed many opportunities in order to really live life to its fullest expression. And so then I think another piece that this misconception does for us, I feel like sometimes opportunities or experiences will be presented to us and we will just take them because we think, oh, this might be the only shot that I have to check this box, instead of really actually going into experiences and relationships and jobs or whatever it is. For me, it was a relationship with more of an open heart and figuring out if it's what you actually even really want to be doing or not, or if it's in alignment with what feels good and true to you. And so I jumped into a relationship and ended up in a marriage that was very, very toxic and very, very, just so much trauma, right? It's probably been one of the biggest trauma experiences of my life, which on this side of it and doing what we do, Dean, I can find a lot of value, right? I find a lot of value in it, in being able to learn about myself and learn about people and learn and grow and learn all about forgiveness and how important self-love is and all these things that I probably wouldn't have been able to learn quite as dramatically, right? Maybe would have taken a little bit longer, but to get all of that information out of that experience. However, it was super traumatic for me, and all because of the misunderstanding or the misconception in my mind that is what we're talking about here, right? The evolution of life and of what is to really express itself. And so here I sit approaching 40 and feel like I am really, really starting to get into the juicy layers of who I am, right? And like the exciting expression and coming across new talents and new skills and new gifts and like all of which obviously there are no, we talk about this all the time too, how there are no accidents, right? Like the evolution of things just is how it is. However, I wonder, like you're talking about, where I would be at in my evolution process had I not had that glass ceiling in those early years and have been able to kind of walk the path with a little bit more grace, I guess, and
right.
and just being more keen and honed in on really what it is that I want, not what it is that my parents want for me or what profession I should go into, even based on like personality profiling systems, right? And things like that, like really, which I love. I'm a personal development junkie, and anybody that loves that personality piece of it, right? Because it's such a big piece of us. But like really being given permission almost to be able to just flourish in my own self-expression and in what it is that really sits and rings true with me.
Yeah, and I think that's another piece, and that's why I threw the hypothesis up front.
Yes, I love it.
It's like, would I have evolved into who I've become if I had been on an island with no pressures?
Right.
I know for a fact the answer to that hypothesis is no, emphatically no. I know for a fact that the personality that I had then compared to the personality I developed is two totally different people because I took that test. Mm-hmm. And when I took that test, what happened for me is...
The test that he's referring to, everybody, is the PAS test.
Yes, the testing system. Mm-hmm. And you can find certain people that provide that test online. Dr. Richard Moody, who was my business partner, longtime best friend that passed away.
Incredible man.
Was the one that was able to give me the test. And what was intriguing to me is you could see right when my personality changed. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And really where it started to change was when at the end of chapter 2, beginning of chapter 3. Mm. And that was where my personality started to absolutely flip. And so I came into the world as a very externalized child, a very flexible child, and a very adaptable child. And going through life, that's not a fun personality to have, because as an externalized kid, I was distracted. I was all over the place as far as like time. I was like clueless with time, and adaptable. I just went along with whatever. And so as a consequence of that, that created a very tough childhood to be in a social structure. Maybe on a desert island it would have been fun. I don't know. But now my personality is an internalized, heavy internalized, well, not heavy, actually midpoint internalized, because I am half, I can go either way, which if you know anything about the testing, I'm considered what they call zero, which is like dead center, internalized, externalized. But what I meant to say was a hard, regulated, heavy regulated person. So I became very, very rigid and regulated in my life. And anybody that knows me will know that they tease me as it being OCD almost.
Just OC.
Just OC.
It's not quite a disorder.
It's not a disorder. And then I've stayed adaptable and very adaptable, but have been able to develop with my rigidity, been able to create some boundaries. And if I had been on an island, if I hadn't had any of life's experiences, all of those things allowed me to make a choice and become more than I probably would have become. So the hypothesis at the beginning, I loved it. I wanted to throw that out there to see what we would say,
right?
Where we would go with it. My opinion is the hypothesis is debunked.
Right, you debunked yourself.
In my opinion.
Well, and I love that.
What's your opinion?
No, I completely agree. And once again, the evolution of you as an individual, of me as an individual, of the listener as an individual, all happens in a beautifully cacophonous, orchestrated sort of way. But I think that the point, like the flag that we're trying to hold on to here, is the fact that the sooner we can really embrace evolution and not feel like we've got to have an arrival, then the more beautiful life can become.
Yes.
The more expressive and freeing and open. And that's not that welcome to being human. That's not going to eliminate hurts and pains and trials. Like, that's part of it. However, it can take the pressure off of trying to be perfect and trying to show up the way that you quote unquote should, or what you're expected to, right? And knowing, I love how everybody always talks about, like, and we live in a society that is so obsessed with youth, right? Like, we're always trying to stay younger. We're trying to look younger. We're trying to not lose that joyful spark, which there's nothing wrong with all these things that I'm saying right now. However, in my experience so far, and I've got proof sitting right in front of me with the birthday boy here at 55, is that the best years of your life are not necessarily your 20s. That they're probably yet to come.
Yeah.
That the wealth and the depth that begins to happen as you do evolve is just so phenomenal and beautiful. That to think at 30, oh, my life's over because I haven't hit these check marks, is just such a tragedy. Yeah. It just really is.
And 21. Like, these kids that come in that we work with, and, they're 21 and they feel like, I've already made these mistakes, and, I've done this and I've done that. And they tell me all these things that they've done, and I listen to them, and then their thought process is, well, my life's over. Like I had an unwanted pregnancy, or I had I was abused, or da-da-da-da-da, and then, my life is over. And, I'm sitting here in chapter 5 going, oh, girl, your life just started.
Yes.
And that's a blip on your radar. Not that it's not traumatic. We've all had our traumas. Not that it's okay that what happened. No, it's not okay what happened. But the fact that it just is a blip is get on getting on.
Yeah.
Get on getting on. And And I think that's the thing.
Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed as well. Like just
be eager.
Yes.
Because the reality of it is that we don't value age in our culture, like you're saying, and it's so intriguing to me how we look at old people and we make fun of them. And, that's kind of the thing nowadays. It's like everybody makes fun of old people, and they make fun of how crazy and how dumb they are, and how short-sighted and short-minded, and how paranoid and how racist, and how and it's like they pigeonhole, they stereotype adults.
Yeah.
And they're what they're doing is they're creating, and that's what's so funny to me about it. I love watching all these kids sitting dogging on old people, and how close-minded they are, and how short-sighted they are, and all this stuff. And it's like, excuse me, they've lived like 10 or 15 more decades than you. So they're not short-sighted. They just have more experiences than you do. But the funny part is that the judgment that you're placing on them now is going to devalue you later.
Right.
Because guess what, dear young person? You will be here soon. And you will be sitting here at 50, and the children will be looking at you, calling you dumb, calling you racist, calling you closed-minded, calling you old. And now I know you're sitting here going, no, I'm not going to be that way. I'm not going to be that person.
Everybody thinks that.
Everybody thinks that. My father thought that. But that's kind of the way we evolve. And until we flip it, because there are a lot of cultures out there. There's cultures in Peru, there's cultures throughout the world that really value the wisdom of the elders.
Yes.
They know that the wisdom of the elders isn't the end-all, be-all. They know that the elders are human, they're flawed, that their choices aren't always, and their advice isn't always the truth. But they also value the elders. And the reason that is so important is because when they value elders and they value aging, they become less afraid of getting old.
Yes.
Now everybody's afraid of getting old. Everybody's afraid of it, like you said. Even your mantra, I get younger and younger every day because we're afraid of getting old. Me, I'm at a point where I love getting older. I love being older. Does it bother me sometimes? The only time it bothers me is when my body won't do what it used to do when I was 20.
Sure.
But, I mean, good grief. If you've got a car that's 55 years old, it's not going to run like the day it came off the showroom floor. But it still runs, and it still runs fast, and it still has a lot of horsepower, and it's still just as valuable. But we don't value, like, if you think about it, here's the crazy part. If I told you, okay, hey, I've got a Mustang, a 1965 Mustang in the parking lot, what would you pay for it?
Bring it. I don't even know, but I know that they're expensive.
Very expensive.
Yes, they're very valuable.
That's how old I am.
Yep.
The same age as a 1965 Mustang. The Mustang was invented in 1964 and a half. That was the first Mustang to hit the floor, to hit the market was 64 and a half. So the first full year Mustang was 1965. And we value it.
Yes.
But we don't value people when they get older. And I think that's the part that I want to really tell you, young men and women, is don't worry about getting old. It's going to happen.
Right. Well, hopefully, right?
Don't fear it.
Yeah.
Don't fear it. Embrace it. But most importantly, embrace where you are right now. Embrace that where you are right now is where you are meant to be. When the social pressures start to weigh in, when all the shoulds and the way your life is supposed to look starts to weigh in, just shake them off and shed them off like old skin off a snake and move into the next moment and become who you are without expectations. Because I do believe that a lot of the choices that brought wreckage in my life have shaped me. And a lot of the choices that have brought hurt and pain and trauma in my life have shaped me. Would I have become the man I am today without them? Probably not. But could I have experienced them without judgment? Could I have experienced them without less self-loathing? Could I have experienced them without having so many expectations and shaming myself? Yes. And if I had done those things, I probably would have evolved to where I am sooner.
Yes.
That's my belief.
That's the hypothesis. Absolutely. Yes. I can't think of a more beautiful way to end the podcast than with that sentence, actually. So, ta-da!
Ta-da! Well, thank you as always, dear listener. Thank you for liking, sharing, and sending our videos and our podcasts forward into the world. As you know, our mission is to just help bring light and love to the world with knowledge. Our opinions are our own. They're not based in anything but our own facts in our minds.
Yes.
If you disagree, please respectfully let us know.
Yep, we love conversation. So until next time, we wish you lots of beautiful evolution, lots of wonderful growing experiences, and we will see, I always say that, we will not see you, but hopefully you will listen to us on the next podcast.